Well, look, thanks to FWD for having me. It's my first time presenting at one of these events. As Tony said, I've done the DevOps ones a few times before, and DevOps was really where I started, so I was trying to find a way to bring these two things back together and have a conversation about that. So we're going to talk a little bit about what cloud can teach us about AI adoption. So I'm going to start with a little quiz. I'm going to read you a statement, and through show of hands, we have a little vote about what I'm talking about. So the statement says, a once-in-a-generation technology advance that will reshape how everybody works and how businesses operate. A mad rush to adopt technology for the fear of missing out, allied with hype-driven marketing that only fuels the FOMO even more. Bold claims of groundbreaking ways of working and architecture that others struggle to replicate. By a show of hands, who here thinks I'm talking about cloud? Who here thinks I'm talking about AI? Who here thinks I'm talking about neither? There was a few. What about both? Yeah, spoiler alert. So look, a little bit about me. I can kind of break my professional life down into three stages. I currently advise for a company called FWD View, who are working, and I work here today with the WorldPay team around a lot of their cloud and data strategy conversations. I do that for other financial services businesses as well. But prior to that, I was building, both as a product and technology leader in different B2B SaaS businesses across HR technology, ed technology, as well as then managed services. But I started my career at a company which some of you may remember called Rackspace. They're not quite as good as they used to be. Sorry if anyone from Rackspace is here and listening. But back in the kind of early 2010s, when the cloud explosion was first happening, Rackspace were very much on the cutting edge of it as the only people who had a cloud who weren't a hyperscaler of the time. And it was my job at Rackspace back then to talk about public cloud and why people should be adopting it. And I got quite a lot of unique insights about why people thought cloud was going to be amazing and maybe what went wrong with some of those pieces. So that's me. That photo is 100% AI generated. Somehow it's managed to make me look older than I actually am. I'm not quite sure how that worked. But to put some contrast in it, what I want to do is take you back in time. Let's go back to 2014. There was a referendum when someone said Remain. The Ice Bucket Challenge was the hottest viral trend of the time. I recognise some of you may actually have been in school or college still, which makes me feel even older. And that young whippersnapper on the end there was at Rackspace talking about cloud. Yes, that is actually me with hair. And it was my job to go and talk about the use of cloud and what was holding enterprises back and try and do some advocacy for why people should spend more money on public cloud ultimately. So I started to ask people this question. What did, in 2014, leaders in technology have in common with the underpants gnomes? So if you don't know who the underpants gnomes are, anyone know who the underpants gnomes are? Good. Some ardent South Park fans. So the underpants gnomes were a character in South Park. And they're in a particular episode where it was their job to go into the kids from South Park's rooms at night and steal their underpants. Now, the kids weren't very happy about this, so they followed the underpants gnomes back to their little under tree lair, and they collared them and said, well, why are you stealing the underpants from everyone? You're getting us in trouble. And they said, it's okay. We have a simple but a very effective business plan for why we're stealing underpants. Step 1, steal underpants. Step 2, step 3, profit. And that was the underpants gnomes' view. I've subtly changed underpants in cloud because the reference still works. Back in 2014, the view was, if I bought enough cloud, eventually magic would happen and my business would get better. There was no step phase 2. They just imagined that if you spend enough money, profit would eventually happen. And I presented back in 2014 that even in that time was statistically not true. So that slide on the left was presented in 2014, and it shows the gap between expectations and reality around operational savings, efficiency savings, and software savings by moving your workloads into the public cloud. And as we know, this story has a familiar ending. Investments did not realise the expected savings. Applications did not scale automatically. Customer experience did not improve as expected, and outages still happened. And ironically, I stand here today in 2025 still helping organisations solve these problems. So we're a long way down from 2014, but yet this perception seems to have a nasty habit of hanging around. So when you put that in the context of AI, we've got a bit of a Groundhog Day situation happening here. Bill Murray is laughing at us. But we must have learned something, right? You can't go through 10 years of technology iteration and not have learned something. And I posit that we have a new and evolved business case for AI. Step 1, we buy AI. Step 2, and here's the kicker, we fire people. Step 3, profit. Not quite sure if it's the firing or the AI that does the profit bit, but it seems to add up all of a sudden. But unfortunately, Bill Murray is still laughing at us. The MIT Forbes article says that 95% of Gen AI pilots are failing. That 74% of companies struggle to scale AI value according to BCG, and that only 22% of these companies succeeded with digital transformation. And I think the success is based on the 22% of people who can define what it was. So we're still in this cyclical situation. But we do have to be real and honest. It's not like cloud was a resounding failure. There was a whole bunch of companies who we heard the stories from back then and we still hear about today who got phase 2 right. They turned cloud into something that made their businesses better. We've heard from people at events from ASOS. We had some great conversations from ING. And also WorldPay, right? I have to rep the people that I'm here working for today. But they are also in the cutting edge of DevOps. Some of their platform work back then was really helping to cut the ground in financial services in particular. But if you look at it, it wasn't because they bought the most cloud. It was because they understood that it was something else. They thought about DevOps. They thought about the CALMS acronym, and they thought about how they would adapt their people, their processes, and their approach to technology to drive the outcomes that a scalable cloud platform would provide. So that was always the secret sauce. And if you look back through time at people who have struggled with cloud implementation and people who have got success from it, these typically tend to be the leading indicators of success. It's the people that thought about org design. It's the people that thought about culture. It's the people who thought about doing the hard yards and working slightly differently. So I think that that is a really informed way of thinking about the future. I will posit here today that we need reflective calms. The foundations of DevOps are still necessary whenever you're dealing with a major technology transformation. If you're not thinking about the culture, the automation, the iterative principles that help you to learn, the measurement of things that matter, and the ability to share both successes and failures with people to learn and grow from them, you will ultimately still struggle to realise the benefit of that technology. But we've got to think forwards now and reflect that and say, well, what needs to be different to make sure we're transposing all those conversations into effective AI adoption? And I would say that we can still use CALMS, but we're having a reflective version of it. So we're going to spend a bit of time talking about what it means to be curious, what absorption means, what learning means in this context, what memory and safety means. Just realised that I changed the M halfway through it. We're going to talk about maturity and not memory. Memory will come up somewhere else. So let's start. I don't want to teach people here to suck eggs. You've probably done DevOps. You know that good culture is the foundation of good technical implementation. So I'm expecting that if you're going back to your businesses and your jobs tomorrow, you are already not throwing work over the wall like a hand grenade. That you are breaking down silos, not just the dev and ops silos, but we're going beyond that. We're talking about security, operations, product, support, sales, even finance. Right? We're having those conversations as a business about how everyone is participating in the use of technology. And we're valuing the learnings from failure. We've moved past this shoot the messenger culture, and we understand that failures happen and they're a chance to learn and improve as a result of them. So I would say that in order to be curious, you have to have a strong culture. So I think that if you're building from those foundations, when you're using AI, you should be thinking cross-functionally about your AI opportunity. This is not a technology project. In fact, it's even more likely than cloud to be a very, very cross-business conversation. All the hard yards you've done to build allies and friends and contacts in these other parts of the organisation are exactly the people you should be talking to broaden your understanding of the problem. How are they going to use it? How are they going to benefit from it? Are people perceiving that they might lose their jobs as a result of it? And as a result, are you having good enough, quality enough conversations about embracing AI as an enabler across that part of the business? And people aren't allowing, through just obscurity, it to be perceived as a threat to their existence and the work that they're doing. If you haven't got a good culture that feels safe, you will not have a good culture, have curious conversations and ask, because people will wonder why you're asking and they'll probably not tell you the truth. I think it's pretty safe to say that automation is still vital. I think that automation has hit its kind of peak with a lot of what AI can help you to generate, but I wouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that AI and automation are synonymous. We're already saying that as a high-performing organisation, you have automated all of the things. I didn't have space for the little guy with the thing, because that would have been a good throwback as well. We're expecting that you're running infrastructure as code pipelines, you've got idempotent configurations, you've got all that ability to manage environments like they're pieces of software. And you are promoting code to production environments via CI/CD, hopefully multiple times per day. All this stuff is tried and tested and it's proven. And you've understood that shipping smaller releases more frequently with lower failure rates is a happy marriage that you can have together. You don't have to have one at the expense of the other. But I think that if you think about the foundations of automation, we're stepping this into absorption. So this isn't just about rolling something out, it's about making sure it's deeply embedded. So when you're using AI, I would be looking for the use cases that are creating friction in the business. There's a tighter culture here, right? When you were automating something back in the day, you would invariably upset someone, normally in security, because your automation was bypassing a check or a balance, or there wasn't a standard change ticket being logged for the releases that you were doing 50 times per day. And that friction led to a conversation to help you to further improve the quality of that automation and embed that practice in the business. Except now we're talking about AI, that friction could come in the form of human friction. I fear AI. I do not have the skills to participate in this conversation. I want to hold it back because I'm worried I'll get left behind. That you might have organizational friction. Your policies are such that you're not able to use AI freely within an organization. You may even have technical hold-ups, so you haven't got the right partners and vendors onboarded, you haven't got the right contracts signed, or you haven't actually got the budget to run the number of tokens that your AI workloads need. But fundamentally, you will not drive a meaningful adoption of AI in your business without friction. It's almost a precursor of success. If your project you're doing today feels easy, accept it's probably superficial and will probably not stand the test of time. This is more than just automation and bots. This is about embedding deep change in how people think and act around business processes. And you will not get those wins easily by just rolling out quick projects. They come with hard yards. So I'm a big fan of thinking in small learning-based iterations, right? I have learned it's a very good disarming tactic when dealing with people who are highly quantified with opinions, to reframe those opinions as hypotheses that are just missing data. And those kinds of practices work really well in an experimental culture. You also know that fast feedback loops are the best way to make sure you don't spend more time than you absolutely need validating whether the thing you're doing is actually making a difference and moving things in the right direction. But I think that if you think about lean principles, they're all about reducing the time to learn. So time to learn is really, really important, because every time that you're not learning, you're spending money potentially in the wrong direction. So I would say that connects quite strongly to making sure your implementation of AI is learning. And that is about you learning, the fact that these models change every day. There are new capabilities. It is unlikely you're going to satisfy every need your organization has around AI from a single hyperscale model. There is all manner of different models out there. They have different strengths and different weaknesses, and it is on key people in your business's responsibility list to keep up with what's changing and make sure that you have model portability baked into how you approach it. I think the most important part of all of this is ensuring that you're addressing how your AI generates memory. So there's a toggle in your GPT or your Claude configuration that turns it on. Because if you don't use those things, effectively you're talking to an AI who knows nothing about you the first time you connect every single time. Imagine a Groundhog Day situation where the new starter you've onboarded yesterday comes in the next day and has forgotten everything about how you've onboarded them. It would be a couple of days before you're like, oh, sorry, mate, you're done, right? Next person. So if you're not enabling your AI systems to retain memory, then you're not going to be able to onboard them and allow them to build on that knowledge and start to help you in new and novel ways. Which is linked very closely to where is the knowledge in your business? Put your hand up if you have a best-in-class, world-class approach to knowledge management in your organization. Right, that guy at the back, everyone needs to go and talk to him with a beer afterwards and find out what he's doing because no one else put their hand up, okay? Knowledge management typically sucks. It's really hard, it's all over the place, some of it's out of date, and as a result, when you're thinking about turning on MCP integrations left, right and centre to your AI, what are you teaching it? How do you validate that it actually knows the stuff that's going to help you rather than the stuff that was true in 2024 when you had a different CEO and your vision and strategy was completely different? You have to have a really strong approach to how you learn. And if you can't teach your people how to learn about your business, you won't be able to teach an AI either. So we know that we're measuring what matters. We know that having high-performing teams is around the 4 key metrics that were wrote out in the Accelerate book, and we know that using data to improve those processes is absolutely key. What we want to be thinking about, though, is, again, this is not a technology project. Although the instance of this piece of work might come from some people in technology walks of life, you are solving much bigger business problems than just, can we release code a little bit faster? We're talking about the P&L of a business. We're talking about your ability to succeed through the next wave of market disruption. So prepare for this going beyond technology oversight. You have to have people in and around your teams who can talk the language of the business. Because if you rock up to one of these presentations and talk to them about models and temperature settings and all those other things, no one cares. They care about how it's going to solve their problem and how you're going to align that with outcomes, not vanity metrics. No one cares how many lines of code you generated. Did that code do anything useful? If so, what? And how do we replicate it? And then finally, I think sharing was the piece that always got overlooked when we talked about DevOps in the past. We used to come to meetups, used to tell nice stories, but the real storytelling happens in and amongst teams, meeting at the end of desks, getting on team sessions, having really open retros and lessons learned about things that didn't go right, and also the successes that people have achieved. You cannot build a psychologically safe culture unless you're encouraging people to lean into that on a day-to-day basis and talk about the stuff they've done wrong and how to help other people from stopping doing that in future. And I think that sharing is part of how you feel safe. So I'm going to talk to you about the 3 S's of safety. Security safety. So where is your data and who can access it? Can you prove your compliance? In July of 2026, most businesses here who are represented will be asked to comply with EU's AI Act. Do you know whether you are a high-risk or low-risk implementation of AI? And can you attest to the controls that they expect you to meet based on your classification? This is going to be like GDPR 2.0, a mad rush at the last minute because no one's actually got ahead of it and worked it out. Suitability. So is your use of AI appropriate for your people who you work with, your customers, but also your brand? If you're a really niche, white glove, bespoke service organization and you roll out AI customer service agents, do your customers expect to be talking to an AI? So there's a big difference here between could and should. And that should is very, very specific and subjective to your business, your go-to-market, and how people might perceive your brand. And the final S is psychological safety. Do people, and I mean that by colleagues and customers, do they feel safe with your AI? Do they trust it? If you're asking it to make quite important definitions about someone's success, I've worked in a psychometrics business, for example. You start to tie psychometrics and AI into job screening situations, you're in a very, very high trust situation, and you have to be absolutely certain you are equipping yourselves with a level of transparency to allow your internal customers and your external customers to trust what it is that you're making. And if you aren't sharing, how can you possibly be perceived as trustworthy? So let's put it all together. I'm going to stick to this model. I think it works. It's the first time I presented it. You can all come and tell me I'm wrong afterwards. Happily debate it. But I think that when you think about these 5 areas, your culture will help you. The investments you've made in building strong foundations in your culture will help you when you're trying to be curious, when you're trying to be safe, but when you're trying to also have conversations about how to go deeper and manage that friction. Because that friction will come across as conflict, and if your culture is ineffective at handling conflict, the whole thing will stop there, and then people will just retreat and not have the conversation. We know that you need to have the foundations to measure the impact of the things that you're doing, but your measurement has to go beyond how much code you're shipping. It has to talk about the rate of value you're creating for the business, the quality of service that you're providing. We know that lean, iterative approaches to solving big problems is a pattern that works. How are you approaching that when it comes to big, hairy problems like knowledge management? And automating that feedback loop. So ideally, we want to get to a world where AI is helping us to suggest the next iterations and improvements that you can go and think about for projects. But if you're not baking that feedback loop around what people are thinking about your current projects into your AI systems, then you're missing a feedback loop that helps it to help you for the next phase. And at all of this, make sure that you have a level of transparency around it that gives people certainty, trust, and confidence that you are not out to take their jobs. And if you are out to take their jobs, just tell people. You know, it's better to do that than hide it behind, oh, this is a really good technology innovation. By the way, half of you are made redundant the next day. So to summarize it, there's no skipping a level here, right? There has and never will be an alternative to doing the hard yards of building high-performing teams. But if you've been coming to meetups like this for the last 10 years and you've become a student of implementing those things, the next phase will come easier to you than the people who are looking for the easy route up to the top. When it gets tough, reflect and think calms. Ask yourself these questions. Talk about it with other people in the business. Continue that conversation and remember that it's not a technology project. You're trying to create value for your business and it needs to go beyond a simple buying of the right services and providers to allow you to realise that. Love to carry on the chat over a beer later. That's for me. Thank you very much.